because my next storyline is DJ Lagway versus Lanorris Sellers. And I really can't stand that they're not playing each other this year. That really sucks. I was hoping that Florida and South Carolina
it would be so awesome. But it's interesting that it's come that I don't know why it's these one versus the other, because where's Garrett Nussmeier in all this? Where are some of the other Nico Iamaleava? Like, where are these guys in all this discourse as well?
LSU. I was talking to Cody Belair, one of our two main talent evaluators, and he said LSU could be a wagon next year. Don't talk about LSU enough. Yeah. We had a whole episode actually.
LSU did work in the portal. They bring back one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So it's interesting because the Lagway Sellers thing, and you and I were texting about this the other day.
Yesterday.
We both think South Carolina and Florida are going to be better and good. The thing about it is we also think Auburn's going to be better. Like, if that's the case, somebody has to get worse for those three to get better. So I think one of those teams, at least, that we think is going to be better is not going to live up to our expectations.
So this is this might be the time, but we did talk about this. Florida's season win total is 6.5. South Carolina's is 7.5. And I have to study their schedules. Maybe River can help me out. Mr. Schedule.
Both schedules are hard.
Them up here.
Yep.
Is there an extra game that Florida plays that South Carolina doesn't? South Carolina has Clemson and Florida has Florida State. We don't know if Florida State's going to be, and Florida also has Miami in the non-conference. So I think that it's possible that, like, who does South Carolina have in the non-conference at the beginning of the year?
Virginia Tech and Clemson.
Okay. So, like, South Carolina being, well, I think Virginia Tech should be a game that they win. I think Florida has one extra non-conference game that's difficult that they could lose theoretically.
No, they have this. Yeah, maybe, but Florida State's coming off 2-10. Are we counting Florida State as a team that? It's
a rivalry situation too. I don't know. Like, maybe not. So if you think the schedules are a wash, which I think is a fair argument.
Well, no, let me ask you this, because we talked about this for Friday, where we're going to talk about the hardest and easiest schedules, and I started working on this last night. And Florida and South Carolina schedules were one that, like, now obviously we can put them both on the list of hard schedules because they're both very hard. I think South Carolina might be harder than Florida's.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
So, like, I haven't gotten any, like, actual strays to the dome this year in terms of, like, my position. But if you've looked at anything I've written in the offseason, anytime that there's a chance to glorify a quarterback, like, I have put DJ Lagway over Lanorris Sellers. Now, that's not a point of I think Lanorris Sellers stinks or that he doesn't have potential to the roof or that he cannot be a star. I mean, look at what they did in this back half of the schedule last year while he was healthy. Things were great. I am very, very high on Florida and DJ Lagway going into the year because, and like, again, Lanorris Sellers is also a freak, but like DJ Lagway looks like somebody who is going to be the first pick in the NFL draft one day. Like, and I don't know if I'm overstating my obsession with his upside, but that's real. And like, I don't know if this is going to be a season bet going into it, but who do you think is going to have a better year?
Which quarterback numerically will have a better year?
Team? And maybe the quarterback drives that, but like I would.
Well, if you look at it, we basically predicted them to have the same year. We basically predicted them to be 10-2, both of them.
But one of them's not going to be. They're not both going to be 10-2. So who do you think?
And I honestly, I think it comes down to the differences in their schedule, or how they play against the common opponents. Like, last year, South Carolina lost to LSU and lost to Ole Miss. Now, a lot of that was because Sellers hurts his ankle at the end of the first half of the LSU game. He's still limited when they play Ole Miss. Like, how they play against LSU and Ole Miss will matter. Florida beat both those teams last year. Like, and does Florida do that again? Like, can Florida go into Baton Rouge in week 3 and beat LSU? I don't know. So,
but there have been people who have said, I don't understand why Lanorris Sellers is not getting as much hype as DJ Lagway. And I think it's a fair question. I'm telling you, from my standpoint, I'm obsessed with DJ Lagway. But I would also put my own personal money on the fact that Florida will have a better year than South Carolina next year.
Here's why I think it is. So, Lanorris Sellers was working with a pretty good team already, and we understood that it was a pretty good team, and we watched them we know why they lost to LSU. They should not have lost to Alabama. They should have won that game at Alabama. And they beat Clemson. They killed Texas A&M. We knew what he was working with. We watched that Florida team look really bad early in the season. And then when DJ Lagway was their starting quarterback, they looked much better. So it feels like Lagway is the main difference. Now, it might not be that he is. It might be that Florida's offensive line got better progressively through the year. Florida's defensive line got better progressively through the year. And so coincidentally, when DJ was the starting quarterback, those groups were good and they played differently than they played against Texas A&M and Miami. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much of that was DJ starting and kind of pulling everybody along. We're going to find out this year because he will be the starting quarterback the whole year. Like, they go to LSU week 3, they go to Miami week 4. Like, we will know very quickly.
Who do you think has more help?
What we're looking at?
Because I see people are like, yeah, well, Florida's more talented. It's like,
are they?
South Carolina's got a really, really good team. So I don't know if that's like a blanket statement you can just toss out there. I mean, typically and historically they have been. I don't know if that's true this year.
I don't know if that's true either. I mean, I saw somebody in the chat say, didn't South Carolina lose their edges? They lost Kyle Kennard, but they brought back Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart's the higher ceiling of those two.
Florida's going to be counting on some freshman receivers this year, I think. And that's kind of a tough, we don't know which way they're going to go type scenario. But Florida does have a very, very good running back. I think their offensive line was improved. They've got the best center in college football. Their defensive line, I thought, got better as the year went on. Like, I think Florida's going to be really good next year. I don't know. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good enough to beat everybody on their schedule. They won't.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're a playoff team because, again, the schedule is hard. And look, you lose to Texas, LSU, and Georgia, which means you beat Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Miami. Like, you're still probably not a playoff team. If you're 9-3 with losses to LSU, Texas, and Georgia, you've won some really good games, but you're not a playoff team. Now, I don't think anybody's getting fired over that. I think they're probably like, okay, we get it. It's fine. But that's the reality of the situation. It's a hard schedule.
Yeah. So, but watching those two play, because they're in the same conference and the same, experience level, though I think Sellers has more playing time. It's going to be kind of like a Lagway versus Sellers debate that's already starting to happen. And I think
I don't understand, because Arch is in the same conference and Nico's in the same conference and Nussmeier's in the same conference. And so, like, who's the best quarterback in the SEC conversation is much more than those two guys.
Who do you take right now going into next year?
It's weird because I'm going to seem like the biggest homer in the world. Like, DJ, here's how you need to know I've been mystified by DJ Lagway. Like, I went from being overly negative about everything Florida to probably overly positive about everything Florida because this guy just feels different.
It's like, do you take the bird in the hand? Because Nussmeier's already really good. Like, you just could take Nussmeier and know what you're going to get.
But I've also seen DJ Lagway play head-to-head with Garrett Nussmeier.
You won take the game. Lagway over Arch.
Right now, yeah.
That's going to be fun. Maybe I should have had 4-headed quarterback monster as a storyline, but that's going to be great.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Did you think that we had star power in college football last year? Like, we had Travis Hunter, and he was a pretty big star, and
but Colorado wasn't in the national. Like, you need somebody. Now, Colorado's in the playoff hunt toward the end of the season, so that helped. But you need somebody who's in, like, feeling very much in the playoff, like one of these quarterbacks or a couple of these quarterbacks, or you mentioned, like, let's say Bryce Underwood starts for Michigan, and they are rolling toward double-digit wins heading into the Ohio State game, like. That's going to be massive.
Do you think that there's been a star power problem in college football the last year or so? Or is it just a contrived story in my head?
I just don't think there were a lot of elite quarterbacks. And you can always tell by looking at the NFL draft. The years where the NFL draft has like 6 guys who are going to go in the first round, you feel like there's more stars.
I mean, the year before they had Drake May, but I don't know if Drake May was a huge quarterback. Jaden Daniels.
There were 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 in the last draft.
Yeah, but who are the 6 again? So Jaden Daniels, who's obviously very
Caleb
good,
Williams,
won the Heisman. Caleb Williams. Yeah. So last year there was
Bo
a
Nix,
huge drop off in
Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, right. And JJ McCarthy. Yeah. So maybe that's a column. Like I was just thinking, like we have a chance to get star power back next year, and like the fun thing about this year going into it though is that the star power that we have a chance to get is largely unproven. Like we don't know what they're going to be, so the intrigue of going into the year, not knowing who it's going to be and watching that play out is also very entertaining. So yeah,
right. And then now the thing about Lagway is he's the one who has to be back in college football in 2026. All these other guys can go pro. So
right.
That's where like he has a chance to really kind of build that up. The other guys, like Arch is gonna be a supernova if he's even the least bit good. And then if Nussmeier's good and LSU's good, we're gonna be concentrating on that.
Because even with Quinn Ewers last year, people forget Quinn Ewers was like the highest rated quarterback prospect of all time. And I think
what about Nico? Like, what if Nico's better at Tennessee? Like, he's a potential, big star in college football.
Yeah. It's electric.
Oh, it's going to be great.